I usually don't go into a conversation thinking of it as going to be an easy one, but this one feels easy. This one feels like I'm just going to be ranting, which is usually what I don't like to do anymore, which is why I don't even have my 2 cent rant section anymore. I like to try and challenge myself. The whole point of this conversation is to really learn something. And I feel like this is just going to be too easy and more of a rant in expressing how I feel about the topic, but hopefully I get something more out of it than I came in with. Because I want to talk about parents, or what a parent is, or I guess what a good parent is. Words are funny things, language is a thing that we use and then we manipulate, and then we change and we figure out new definitions and meaning, and there's popular usage and all that stuff. And I mean, if you look up parent in the dictionary, I think you're probably going to find is someone with a child, or it says like a mother or father, or like someone who has someone with a child apparently is a parent. And I guess this has not been this is not how I have defined things or thought of things for as long as I can remember, because I guess when I default to parent, I default to what is a good parent. I don't even define someone who's not there as a parent anymore. Like, they are not doing the job of a parent, but I guess their job is done. Like, the job was a biological process, I guess, for some people, and then the job's done and they can just call themselves a parent, and that's really bothersome to me and really annoying. But again, it's just a language thing, and I'm curious now as to how many other people have views on how they define what a parent is. And that's why I have the parentheses saying good parent, because I'm like, okay, well, if we can't define a parent by their actions, it's just the title you give someone when they've had sex with someone else that resulted in a baby being born. Like, you are a mother, you are a father. Like, that's the thing. Like, the word parent just defaults back to those things. It says a mother or a father, or it says someone who has a child. And that's the thing, too, is like, well, what is a father? What is a mother? Like, again, just you went through a biological process together, and then a kid was born, and therefore you are now that thing. You don't actually have to do anything to upkeep that title. You don't actually have any responsibilities or a role to play, because by dictionary definition, you don't. It's done. There's like, the biological process doesn't always result in children, and doesn't always intend to result in children, and yet sometimes there's accidents happen, or stupid things, and then a child is the result of this physical connection, and then all of a sudden you're a mother or father or a parent, despite the fact that you didn't want to be. So I don't know. I just think the language around it is even interesting. And so, I mean, I default, if I talk about like, oh, this is what a parent should be, or a mother or a father or whatever, it's more, I guess, of you having to add the extra little bit of a good parent in there. I started talking about this in the last vlog because of Father's Day, and I started to like rant about some stuff, and I was like, oh, I should save this for a conversation, and then I completely forgot that I said that, and then I went on to have a conversation about racism, or me, and being racist, or not being racist, or whatever. You can go back and listen to that if you haven't. Anyway, and I completely forgot that I had this thing on deck, and it would have been better to do right away, but when I was editing the vlog, I was like, oh yeah, I said that I was gonna talk about this, and I really do want to talk about it still. It's always relevant, is the thing, and especially in my life now, it's super relevant. It was relevant before because I have parents, or like I have people in my life that, like, I'm here, aren't I? So like, somehow, some way I was born, and so it's relevant in that aspect. And the last year it's been more relevant, and it gets more and more and more relevant as time goes on, because children in my care. So that's the other thing. With a dictionary definition, it's like, oh, what did it say? Like, one of the simple ones is just like, if you have a child, what is it? Now I gotta waste time looking it up. A person who is a father or a mother, another definition is a person who has a child. Well, what does it mean to have a child? I often use the phrase, I have a child in my care, or I have children in my care. Is that having a child? Is that owning a child? Like, I don't know. I don't own a child. I don't legally have any responsibility to a child in the sense of paperwork. Then again, some paperwork I'm on there as guardian. So, I don't know. But I mean, like, any minor that's in the care of an adult, I mean, that adult has a responsibility, whether it's a daycare provider, like, or a daycare person, or a babysitter, or, whatever. That automatically is like, there's some legal responsibility there. However, it's just not the same as like, oh yes, I was there and I signed a birth certificate, and then I friggin' pieced off and just didn't come back. Like that's a whole other thing. So what is a parent? What is a good parent? I ranted for 5 minutes already about nothing, apparently. So, I struggle with this because I'm like, being a parent isn't just, fulfilling this biological process with the intention or not the intention to have a child, and then that's it. There's, I think, more to that, and playing an active role that takes time and presence. That's not presence with an NCE, of actually being there. And if you aren't physically there, then you are there in any other way you can be, which sometimes is financially, it's emotionally, it's, mentally, it's support, it's, communicating, reaching out, emailing, whatever, messaging, any way that you could possibly be there to have a relationship. I think you can still have a parental relationship without being in the home. I think that, being a parent or being a good parent is a lot of things. And I mean, I guess that's what it comes down to, is caring for a child. Not just having a child, not just having some DNA that you share with a kid. That doesn't mean anything. Again, this goes back to, like, family in general. Blood means nothing. Like, what does that mean? Like, oh, we're family. Like, people have attached different meanings to what family is, right? And it's like, oh, that's my family, I can't do that. Why? That's a person. That is a person. And you are bound by what? Blood? By DNA? That you had no choice in the matter? So that person isn't deserving of your normal actions? Like, if I had a friend, or if there was someone in my life that was abusive, and they took advantage of me, and they took me for granted, and they used me, and blah, 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 over and over and over again, I was like, no, I need to cut this person out of my life. They're really negative. They're not adding anything positive to my life. They're gone. But all of a sudden, because that person shares blood with me because they're a cousin or a sibling or a mother or a father or a grandparent or whatever it is, all of a sudden people get all messed up about it and be like, well, that's family, I can't do that. Why? Like, if that person is showing you with their actions that they do not care for you in any way, and they aren't adding any positive energy to your life, then if that was the circumstance where you normally would cut someone out, why wouldn't you do it because of family? Because of that word, family, that is just there because you share some DNA. I think you can choose your family. We talk about the word family as like something that is more emotional, like in a relationship that you carry. Like, that's the thing. How can you just have family? You're like, oh, they're family. I've seen them once in my life. Yes, Kate, I understand the definition of you share some DNA in your family in that aspect, but it's not like you should have any special consideration for them than someone else you've known, for just as long or twice as long or whatever. I think it's silly. So that kind of goes to the same thing of like, well, why do we call people parents who aren't parenting? They're not doing things that they would do as the responsibility or the role of a parent, which I would say is caring for a child, right? That's what we can say, like, people are bad parents because they're not caring for their children, because they're letting them do whatever the heck they want and just like giving in to this, that, and the other desire, and not actually taking the time to teach and educate and have patience and communicate and build a positive relationship. More so, sometimes there's a facade of a positive relationship because a child is having happy experiences at this moment that are detrimental to them, right? Like, I mean, like, giving a kid everything they want, I would say is detrimental. So, like, yeah, you can do whatever, you can do this, you can do that, let's go get ice cream, let's have pop and juice all day, and let's just like sugar, 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 and we'll buy you everything you want, and whatever, you know what I mean? Like, that would make a kid pretty happy in the moment, and then over time, when those things start to negatively impact a child, then that's not great for anybody. So anyway, so I mean, you can have examples of bad parenting or of just non-parenting, because I don't think that is taking care, like, of a child. Making sure a child doesn't die is not, that's like the bare minimum. Like, is that caring? That's just keeping like a pet alive. Like, there's a huge difference. I mean, just even throwing food and water in a dish and just being like, here you go. Is that care? I don't think so. You know what I mean? Like, this is the result of many things. So one of them, like I said, this goes back to Father's Day, because I was all like messed up about it, because I was like, oh wow, like this is weird. I haven't thought about Father's Day for years. I haven't thought about it for so long, because I mean, my mom and dad got divorced when I was 4 years old, and then I had like a stepdad when I was 10 or 11. My mom got remarried, and that was not a great situation at all. So even in the house, like, there was never like a positive like moment that I can think back to with that stepdad. Like, it just wasn't there. Like, there was no patience, education, teaching. I'm not even talking about positives and it made me feel good. I mean, nothing there was being done to aid in me becoming a better person, like, at all. But then I think about like my biological father, if we call him that. Like, there's been, over the course of years, like after 4 years old, like, I mean, there's been contact. There's been very few times I've seen him. Okay, since I was 4 years old, which is now 30 years ago, I have seen him 5 times. I believe. 5. One of them when I was 5 years old. One summer when I was like 10, one summer when I was 11, one when I was 12, one when I was 13. And then when I was in like my mid-20s. Oh. I'm forgetting. That's funny how I completely forget about that. There was a period of time where he lived in Saskatoon. I don't remember how long that was for like a year. And I barely saw him then. Yeah. So it's been rare. I don't think it's necessary to maintain a healthy, positive relationship, or even a parental relationship. I don't think you need to physically be there. Not at all. I mean, it just comes into that other aspect of positive interactions that are not just leaving a child happy because they get whatever they want and they're spoiled. It's of like teaching and there's learning going on in how to, I mean, it's raising, right? It's like, it's playing a role in trying to, well, I don't know any other way. I mean, it all comes down to teaching, is how I feel. Like, correcting behaviors, teaching good behaviors, rewarding good behaviors, like disciplining poor behaviors, all those things, and being a good example. I guess that's what this comes down to, is the key word here is example. Because I was thinking about it like a month ago or so. Maybe it was longer than that. And I guess I've had a stepdad now for I don't know how many years they've been married, like 12, 13, I don't even know. But my mother got remarried a third time, like X amount of years ago. And I was already an adult. I was already living outside the home when this happened. This relationship kind of started. I was already moved out. So I didn't really think of him as a stepdad even after they got married, because I was like, well, there's no part in raising me, right? So it was like, oh, this is just my mother's husband. And then there's all these technical like things. I'm like, oh, I guess I have stepbrothers and stepsisters now that I have like almost never met and whatever, or met like once, some of them. I think there's one I only met once. Anyway, so there's all this connection now, but I was just like, well, he's a great guy. Like, there was nothing about that. It wasn't like a wanting to distance. It was just like there's automatic distance because there's no raising involved. But then I was thinking about a month ago or so, maybe 2 months ago, I don't remember when, because I was thinking about the role that I'm in right now, and I was thinking about what that is and everything else, and I thought about so much of this is about example. You teach by example, right? Like, in so many ways. There's implicit learning happening. There's subconscious learning happening, and things are going on because of your example. It's not just about sitting down and having a conversation with someone, telling them this is what is good and this is what is not good, and when this happens, this is the consequence of that action. It's about showing somebody with your actions how you would like to be treated, how you treat other people, how they should be treating other people, and things, and whatever else. There's tons of different stuff. And I was just thinking, like, oh, Norman has been a really good example to me in my adulthood. Not around each other a lot, and we don't generally talk very often, but I was just thinking about it then, and I was like, even in my adulthood, I can say that he was a really good example, and I think that's a key thing of being a parent, or a good parent, is being a good example for your child, that they learn things. And obviously, as time goes on, and children mature, that they sometimes understand things then they didn't understand before. I'm like, oh, that's why my mom was doing this thing. That's why my parent or my unit was doing this stuff. And like, I wish that would have clicked earlier, but it didn't, and it clicked now, and I completely understand and get it. And like, I realize now that these were good things I should have been learning, or whatever. Or just being able to understand, oh, my mother was trying to do something that didn't really catch, but now I understand her intentions, and whatever. So I was thinking about that, and just the word example. I don't know, I feel like this went way off the rails and didn't get as specific as I wanted it to get. I mean, I don't know, it wasn't meant to be like an instruction booklet on like, this is what a good parent is, this is what a bad parent is, and it's less ranty than I thought, which I guess is a good thing. But I mean, that's the thing, I don't really think someone's physical presence needs to be there, but a relationship needs to be there, a positive relationship needs to be there. Otherwise, what are you? Like, what are you doing? If you're not, again, that word care is in there too. Caring for a child. I don't think anyone who cares for a child is automatically thrust into the definition or label under the umbrella of parent. But I mean, you know, you've got teachers, you've got babysitters, you've got uncles and aunts and whatever. You wouldn't call them a parent, but they are caring. I mean, they should be caring for a child. If that's, the child is around them, they have interactions with them, they have a relationship with them, I mean, that should be the thing, right? Like that's the positive thing. And if someone has a relationship with a child that isn't doing those things, maybe they shouldn't be there. I just think that, you know, the word parent, I guess, is so, before now, like before this past year, before there were any children in my care at all, this is something that I just, like I said, I'm here, I'm alive, I have parents in some definition or another, and it's something that I've thought about a long time because my biological father, you know, isn't really there. We don't have an existing relationship now. I mean, the relationship is mute. I guess I could say moot too, but I was saying mute as in like we don't talk. Like, despite not talking, I mean, it still affects me because it's still something that should have been. Like, the absence is still something that is present in my life, still guides my actions, because, I mean, it's like if you were to grow up in a home with an alcoholic, you would eventually make a choice and be like, well, that's how I was raised, so I guess I'm an alcoholic now. Like, eventually, I mean, it's subconscious to a degree. There's nature and nurture, but at a certain level of maturity, you make a choice to either change and be different because you didn't like the way that you were raised or the things that were happening in your home, and you consciously decided that I'm going to be better than that, or you just blindly fumble your way through and just end up doing the same things that you were taught to do by example. And anyway, the absence is there that still guides me into how I want to be different. And I've thought about that before, even when I was like, I don't want kids, you know, when that was a thought, like, it still was, like, that absence still played a role in how I thought about situations or how I acted and how I navigated my life. So now it's even more important. Like, now this topic, thinking about things, processing stuff, is even more important than before, and it's even a more serious subject than before. Because, again, if you're not doing anything positive, why are you there? Like, having a title doesn't mean anything if you're not going to be using, if you don't fulfill the title. It's like saying, like, I'm the goalie, and you are on the bench every single time. You don't actually play your role. You're on the bench. Like, and then you go in there for 30 seconds and you screw everything up, or you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that's a good example or not, but it's just having the title for whatever reason doesn't mean anything if you're not fulfilling the title. If you are not spending the time and energy and whatever else in order to leave a positive impact, then you are taking away from the situation. I can't think of any other way that like there's no way around that. That's just the math. That if you're not adding, you are subtracting in that scenario, because that time could be spent elsewhere. So if someone, sees a kid once every year or once every month or even once every week, and the interaction ends up being confusing or negative or, not adding in a positive way to that child's growth and learning, then that's just taking time away where they could be having positive interactions and growing and learning in a positive way. So, yeah, I just, now more than any other time, it's there all the time. Like, I'm still just like, it's so conscious, I'm so aware of like parental roles, positives and negatives, being a good example, how to do this, how to do that, figuring things out. It's just on my mind in the forefront so much more, and weighs heavy on my heart way more than it did, because beforehand it was like every once in a while things would creep up and I'd feel weird about my situation with my dad. And I mean, so that's the thing. When I say that, to me, it's a hollow term. Like, it doesn't mean it's just a title. That's all that it is. If I say my dad or my biological father or whatever, I don't feel like I have a father outside of that. And if I did, I'd probably be way more careful about using that term for, my biological dad or my biological father. Like, I'm not saying biological because there's someone else that fills that role, because I feel like the stepdad. That's the thing. I didn't have positive interactions with somebody that I lived with for, like 6 years? More than 6 years? Which was, I categorize, okay, my dad is just my dad because of a label, and I just say biological to clarify that I don't think of him as a good father. I guess that's why I keep saying biological, which is confusing. Because my stepdad that was there for the most chunk of time in raising me, I still call stepdad, even though there's no relation to him now whatsoever. Like, I mean, they've been divorced for years, like over a decade and a half or however long it's been. When we do the math, it's been, over 15 years, I guess. So that's the thing. I still just say that because no one else has replaced that label in a way. I still say stepdad just because of that, but he didn't ever replace the label of dad or father, because his presence was so negative that even though years of living with him, it was just like, okay, and I mean living with him and my mom, not just him. But there was, I mean, it's not that it was so forgettable. It impacted me. There's, again, more examples of what not to do, examples of how I don't want to be, etc. But, like, I don't think of him. We don't have a relationship now. We don't talk. It's like, he's a non-entity. Like, it's just not there. And then Norman, I just like, oh, it's Norman. Like, it only because, and that's the thing, out of these three, like, father figures that we call them that in my life, he had the least amount of opportunity to affect any positive change or positive anything, but he's the most positive person out of those three. Or like, it's a shame that he wasn't there sooner, I guess. But that's the thing. It's just a weird thing with language and labeling and whatever else. And that's why I guess I still say, like, oh, dad is, biological, whatever, the reason I'm here physically, and then stepdad was there as a stepdad and was not a good one, and not there anymore, and hasn't been forever. And then Norman, by language and title, whatever, is a stepdad now. It's like, oh, that's my stepdad. That's a very new thing for me to even like call him that on a regular basis or whatever, just because I just never thought of it. It just didn't really enter my mind as like, oh yeah, I guess I have a stepdad, but I like don't live at home, and it's just weird. I don't know. Anyway, all these things relate to some of my experiences, I guess, but I didn't go into a lot of detail there. More in generalities of how some of my experiences have played into what I think, about this fact, like why for me, and I don't know how it is for other people, how you define a parent and defining a good parent. I think it's incredibly simple. You can go and strip down in every scenario, what would you do, and this would make you a good parent or a bad parent or somewhere in between or struggling or whatever, and you learn and you grow as you go along and all this stuff. But I mean, like, you could do that, and we could talk about all these different scenarios as to what would make you a good or bad parent. But I mean, if we're just trying to define a good parent, it's like being a good example, being a good educator of children, caring for a child in a good way, using, different methods other than throwing food and water at them or doing things to make them happy. That is not a good parent. I don't think making someone happy means you're a good anything, where it's like, oh, I'm a good boyfriend because I make my girlfriend happy. Well, are we talking about happiness in the moment, or are we talking about long-term happiness? Or like, saying no is a perfectly reasonable, good, positive thing that should happen, especially in a child-parent relationship. Because that little person, isn't of age to know what is best for them yet. Like, if you had a supermarket in your house and they could just grab whatever they wanted anytime they wanted, or every time that they're with you, you give them everything they want, and what they want is, if what they want is unhealthy, whether I'm talking about like dietary stuff, but I mean the way they spend their time too, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, hey, you can do whatever you want today, just whatever, and their kids are locked up in their room with a screen in front of their face for 12 hours. Probably not a good choice. Probably not a super healthy way to be, and that's not a positive interaction. That's not a learning thing. That's not an opportunity for growth. And if you give that child that opportunity every time, and they choose it every time, does that make the child a horrible person? No. At a certain age of maturity, that child needs to make choices for themselves that benefit them. But they are in a mode of learning with brains that are not fully formed. So your job as caring for a child is to assist them in making decisions that will benefit them in the moment and later on. Being happy that's not necessarily a positive experience. We have a range of emotions for a reason, and like, we learn to be okay with things in a way. It's like being told no a couple times. Maybe depending on the scenario, maybe it's just normal and there's no pushback. And maybe at first there will be pushback, and eventually someone understands, oh, I'm being told no, and that's okay. Like, because that's not the thing that I should be doing right now. And so eventually maybe I'll learn to make better decisions myself. I'm going to go sliding off the rails completely, trying to get into some specifics. But I mean, it's again, I'm trying to make it just like, it's a very simple thing. Be a good example. Be a good educator of children. Both of those things fall under the umbrella of one word, which is care. Caring for a child. That is it. And what the word care means, again, is going to be completely different. Because for some reason, some people think like, oh, I just give them whatever they want and they're happy. That's caring. No, it's not. And the same thing for like, well, they got food and water. That's all they need. Shelter, clothing. That's it. I'm good. Like, no, you're not. I don't know where else to go with that right now. I'm always really judgmental. I've been really judgmental for a long time about like anything you can imagine. Parenting is one of those areas too, where even though it's just one of those dumb things that's like, people are like, well, you don't have kids, you don't know. I'm like, how do I not know? How can I not be just an adult who has opinions on things that are informed opinions? Because I'd be like, yeah, that's obviously not a positive thing. Like, that doesn't, you don't need to have kids in order to be able to make comments about how people raise their kids. I think it's pretty obvious sometimes that the interactions that are happening maybe right in front of you are not positive ones, are completely negatively impacting them or whatever. And so even, I was already there. I was already, just like judging every single thing I see because I'm seeing it, and then having to process whether or not that sticks with me or I don't really know what's going on in the situation and let it go, or whatever. But I mean, it's one of those things that, like, I don't know how to explain it. It's not like I have this innate, like, super. I don't know. It's not like I have this innate thing inside me that being a parent is my mission and my only goal in life. And again, people who hold on to that, I think, are ridiculous and not worth much of anything. If having a child in your care is what gives you fulfillment in life, you're not doing anything. Like, if that is what gives you your purpose, you have no purpose. You are pretty much worthless. So let's ramp it up there. I get like, that's something I've said before, and I didn't even think about bringing it up in here, but it makes perfect sense here. Why did I bring that up? This is going off the rails more than anything has in so long. Oh yeah, it's just the fact of, like, I don't have that thing in me that some people have. Like, I'm just a natural mother. Like, that's who I am. I know that I'm born to be a mom. Like, no, I was not. I don't think I was born to be a parent. And so that's why it bothers me even more now, where I'm in a parental role, that this other stuff bothers me even more, because I'm there every day. I am fulfilling this role and doing, like, it, and so seeing how anyone in any circumstance is abusing the role, abusing the privilege of having children in their care, of, like, seeing it as a novelty or, like, a photo op to, you know, like, look at me, I'm a dad, I'm a mom, look what I can do, like, I'm a family, like, man, like, that's reprehensible behavior. Yeah, I'm just losing myself. So maybe we'll come back to this subject some other time with a little more focus. But that's on being a good parent, I guess. We'll see you another time.